My name is Sarah Mae Collier, and I was born into chains in Chatham County, North Carolina, in the year 1831. The red clay beneath my feet has known my blood, my sweat, my tears, and now it would know my voice, though they would do everything in their power to silence it forever. I work the tobacco fields of the Hartwell Plantation, where the leaves grow thick and green under a sun that shows no mercy to those of us who labor beneath it from dawn until the last light bleeds from the sky. My hands are calloused and cracked, split open in places that never quite heal, stained a permanent brown from the tobacco sap that seeps into every crease and crevice of my palms. The smell of it clings to my skin, my hair, my clothes, sweet and sickly, a scent I will carry with me all my days. I am 24 years old, though some mornings I feel ancient, as if I have lived 100 lifetimes in this body that aches and protests with every movement. The plantation stretches across 300 acres of rolling North Carolina land, beautiful in a way that mocks us. How can something so lovely contain so much suffering? The main house stands white and proud on the hill, its columns reaching toward heaven like prayers from people who don't know what prayer truly means. Behind it, hidden from the road, are the slave quarters, 12 rough cabins where nearly 80 souls try to find rest after days that break both body and spirit. I share my cabin with 6 other women, our sleeping pallets so close that I know the rhythm of each woman's breathing, the sounds of their nightmares, the tears they cry when they think no one can hear. But what terrifies me most, what keeps me awake long after the others have surrendered to exhausted sleep, is not the endless labor that grinds us down day after day. It is not the lash that Master Hartwell's overseer, a cruel man named Clemens, wields with such enthusiasm. It is not even the hunger that gnaws at my belly when the rations run short in winter, or the cold that seeps through the gaps in our cabin walls. What I fear most is what happened 3 months ago in the barn behind the big house, and what they are doing now, what they have been doing every single day since, to make absolutely certain that no one ever knows the truth of it. Master Hartwell's nephew, Thomas, came to visit from Raleigh that summer. He was 22 years old, fresh from university, full of ideas about progress and civilization and the modern world. He spoke kindly to us at first, smiled, asked our names, commented on how well kept the plantation was. That should have been my warning. I had lived long enough to know that kind words from white men always come with a price attached, a price we would be forced to pay whether we agreed or not. It happened on a Tuesday evening in August. I remember it was Tuesday because that was the day I had to collect eggs from the hen house behind the barn, a task I had performed hundreds of times without incident. The sky was turning that deep purple color it gets just before full dark, and the cicadas were singing their lonely, desperate song in the trees. I was thinking about my mother, who lived on the neighboring Johnson plantation, wondering if she was looking at the same darkening sky when Thomas Hartwell found me there. What Thomas did to me in that barn, what he took from me with violence and entitlement, and the absolute certainty that he could do anything he wanted to my body without consequence, I cannot put into words that wouldn't burn straight through this page. But I can tell you this, I fought him with every ounce of strength I possessed. I screamed until my throat was raw and bleeding. I clawed at his face, his arms, anything I could reach. And someone heard me. Multiple people heard me. Mama Ida, the oldest woman among us at nearly 70 years, heard my cries from where she was drawing water from the well. Jacob, who worked in the stables and was like a brother to me, heard and came running. They both saw Thomas stumbling out of that barn, adjusting his clothes with shaking hands, his face flushed with a mixture of shame and rage and something else, satisfaction, perhaps, or simply the calm certainty of a man who knows he will never face consequences for his actions. They saw me moments later, crumpled in the dirt and straw, My dress torn beyond repair, blood on my thighs, my face already beginning to swell where he had struck me to silence my screams. That should have been the end of Thomas Hartwell's visit to his uncle's plantation. In any just world, it would have been the end of his freedom, the beginning of his punishment. But this was not a just world, and it never had been. This was North Carolina in 1855, and I was property, not a person. I was an investment, a tool, a thing to be used, and things do not get justice when they are damaged by their owners or their owners' family members. Thomas left the plantation the very next morning, riding away in his fine carriage as if nothing at all had happened, as if he had not destroyed something in me that could never be rebuilt. And 2 hours after his departure, Master Hartwell gathered every single one of us, all 80 enslaved people who lived and worked on his land, in the yard in front of the big house. We stood in the hot morning sun, confused and afraid, while he looked at us with cold eyes that promised retribution. "I want to make something absolutely clear," he announced, his voice calm and measured, the way you might discuss the weather or the tobacco crop. "Anyone who speaks a single word about anything that may or may not have occurred during my nephew's visit will be sold south before the sun sets on that day. And if I hear so much as a whisper of rumors circulating in town, among the other plantations, or in any church or gathering place, I will know exactly where those rumors came from, and the consequences will be severe. Am I understood?" The silence that followed was absolute. We all understood perfectly. Being sold south meant the deep plantations of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, places where they worked you literally to death in cotton fields that stretched to the horizon, where the heat killed as efficiently as the overseer's whip, where they didn't even pretend you were human. It meant never seeing your family again, never hearing a familiar voice, dying alone among strangers who wouldn't even know your name to mark your grave. It was the threat that hung over all of us, every day of our lives, the ultimate punishment, the final severing of every fragile thread that connected us to anything we loved. So we stayed silent, all of us, even Mama Ida, who had raised half the children on the plantation, even Jacob, whose hands had clenched into fists when he saw what had been done to me, even me. The silence that settled over the plantation after Master Hartwell's threat was not peaceful. It was suffocating, oppressive, heavy as a burial shroud. It pressed down on all of us, but it pressed hardest on me, because I was the one carrying the truth that everyone else was desperate to forget. In the weeks that followed, I watched them systematically erase me, as if by making me invisible they could make what happened to me disappear entirely. Master Hartwell sent me to work in the farthest tobacco fields, the ones that bordered the swamp where the mosquitoes rose in clouds, so thick you breathed them in with every breath. I was removed from any position where I might be seen by visitors, by neighboring plantation owners, by anyone from town. Mrs. Hartwell, who had employed me as a house servant for 6 years, who had taught me to arrange flowers and serve tea and move silently through rooms full of white people discussing their white people concerns, now acted as if I had never existed. When the circuit judge came for dinner, when the county commissioner stopped by to discuss tobacco prices, when the minister arrived for his weekly Sunday meal, she brought in other girls to serve, girls who hadn't been violated, girls who didn't carry the evidence of her family's sin in their eyes. But the worst part wasn't being hidden away like something shameful. The worst part was the way some of my own people looked at me, or rather, the way they stopped looking at me. There were whispers in the cabins at night, conversations that died when I entered a room. She must have done something. I heard one woman mutter to another, though they didn't know I was close enough to hear. Must have encouraged him somehow. Must have smiled at him wrong, or showed him something she shouldn't have. White men don't just do things like that for no reason. It was easier for them to believe I had somehow invited my own destruction than to accept the truth, that none of us were safe, that any white man could do anything he wanted to any of us at any time, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. To acknowledge what really happened to me meant acknowledging their own vulnerability, their own powerlessness, and that was a truth too terrible to live with every single day. Mama Ida never blamed me. She would slip extra cornbread into my hand when the overseers weren't watching, would touch my shoulder in passing, would look at me with eyes full of sorrow and understanding. But she didn't speak about it, couldn't speak about it, because she had 5 grandchildren on this plantation, and the threat of being sold south applied to her too. Jacob stopped looking at me altogether, and I understood why. Every time he saw my face, he was forced to remember that he had been utterly powerless to protect me, and that knowledge was killing him slowly, carving him hollow from the inside out. At night, lying on my pallet in the cabin I shared with women who now treated me like I carried some contagious disease, I would feel the truth burning inside me like a fever that wouldn't break. It wanted out. It demanded to be spoken, to be acknowledged, to exist in the world as a real thing that had happened to a real person with a real name, Sarah Mae Collier, not just that girl, not just Hartwell's property, but me, a human being whose violation mattered. But every time I opened my mouth to speak, Master Hartwell's voice echoed in my mind, sold south before sunset. So I swallowed the truth day after day, and it sat in my belly like poison, spreading through my blood, my bones, my dreams. October came, bringing cooler air and the constant labor of the tobacco harvest. My hands bled from stripping the leaves, my back screamed from bending over plants for 12, 14, 16 hours a day. But physical pain was almost a relief. It gave me something to focus on besides the truth that was consuming me from the inside out. Then, on a Sunday morning when the autumn sun painted the world in shades of gold that mocked our suffering, everything changed. A circuit preacher arrived at the plantation, a white man named Reverend Samuel Morrison from the Methodist Episcopal Church. He was different from our usual minister, Reverend Parks, who preached comfortable sermons about obedience and knowing one's place in God's divine order. Reverend Morrison was younger, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that seemed to actually see us. Not through us, not past us, but see us as people. He had been traveling through Chatham County, preaching at various plantations, and Master Hartwell couldn't refuse him hospitality without appearing ungodly in front of the other plantation owners in the region. The service was held in the yard, as it always was. We stood in our designated area, always separate, always apart, while Reverend Morrison preached. But his sermon wasn't about obedience or contentment or accepting our lot with Christian humility. Instead, he spoke about truth with a passion that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The truth is a living thing, he declared, his voice carrying across the yard to where we stood in our worn Sunday clothes, our one set of garments that weren't work-stained and falling apart. You can try to bury it 6 feet deep. You can try to hide it in darkness. You can try to pretend it never existed at all. But truth has a way of rising up, of pushing through the soil, of making itself known in the light of day. God sees the truth, even when men try to hide it. God knows what happens in the darkness, behind closed doors, in barns and back rooms, and places where people think no one is watching. And God will bring it to light, because that is his nature, to illuminate, to reveal, to make known what was hidden. I felt something crack open inside my chest, like ice breaking on the river in spring. It was as if Reverend Morrison was speaking directly to me, as if God himself had sent this man to this plantation on this specific morning to tell me that what happened to me mattered, that the truth of it mattered, that silence was not the same as peace and could never bring healing. After the service, Reverend Morrison did something unusual. He approached Master Hartwell and asked if he might speak privately with some of the enslaved people about their spiritual welfare and their understanding of Christian doctrine. Master Hartwell, who couldn't refuse without looking like he opposed Christian education and ministry, reluctantly agreed. But he stationed Clemens, the overseer, nearby with instructions to listen to every word. When Reverend Morrison approached me, I felt my heart hammering against my ribs, so hard I thought it might break through. He looked at me with those sharp, seeing eyes, and I knew that this was my one chance. This moment right here. If I let it pass, if I chose silence again, I would carry this truth to my grave, and Sarah May Collier would be erased as completely as if I had never existed. "You carry a heavy burden, daughter," Reverend Morrison said softly. "I can see it in your face, in the way you hold yourself. Would you tell me about it?" And in that moment, with Clemens listening just yards away, with everything I had to lose lined up like dominoes ready to fall, I made a decision that would change everything. I waited until Clemens's attention drifted towards some commotion near the barn. Two boys roughhousing, drawing his irritated attention. Then I looked Reverend Morrison directly in the eyes and I whispered, fast and urgent, the words tumbling out before I could lose my courage. "Master Hartwell's nephew, Thomas, violated me in the barn in August. There were witnesses. Mama Ida heard me screaming. Jacob from the stable saw him coming out afterward, saw what he'd done to me. Master Hartwell threatened to sell us all south if anyone spoke about it. They're trying to hide the truth. They're trying to make it like it never happened, like I don't matter at all." Reverend Morrison's face went pale, then flushed red with an anger I had never seen on a white man's face. Not anger at me, but for me. "Who else saw this?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled, but trembling with fury. "Mama Ida, Jacob, but they'll deny it now. They'll say I'm lying because they're terrified. They have families here, grandchildren, people they can't protect if they're sold away. I understand why they're afraid. I'm afraid too. Are you afraid right now?" he asked, and the question hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. "Terrified," I told him honestly. "But I'm more afraid of letting them erase what happened. I'm more afraid of dying with this silence inside me, of letting Sarah May Collier disappear like I was never even real. I'm more afraid of what it means if I don't speak, not just for me, but for every woman like me who has no voice, no protection, no way to say, this was done to me and it was wrong." Reverend Morrison's jaw tightened. "I cannot promise this will end well for you, daughter. In fact, I can almost guarantee it will bring you suffering. But I can promise you this. I will speak the truth of what you've told me. I will not let it be hidden. I will not let them erase you." He was true to his word in a way that both terrified and exhilarated me. That very afternoon, before he left the plantation, as several neighboring plantation owners gathered to bid him farewell, because a traveling preacher's departure was a social event, an opportunity for white men to network and discuss business, Reverend Morrison did something extraordinary. He stopped in the middle of the yard, in full view of everyone, and his voice rang out clear and uncompromising. "I have heard testimony this day of a grave sin committed on these grounds, a sin against one of God's children, a violation of the most heinous kind, a sin that has been deliberately concealed through threats and intimidation. I call upon you, Master Hartwell, before these witnesses and before God, to answer for it." The rage that transformed Master Hartwell's face was terrible to behold. His hands clenched into fists, and I saw him take a step toward Reverend Morrison before he caught himself, remembered that there were witnesses, remembered that you cannot simply strike a white preacher in front of other white men without severe social consequences. "You have been told lies by a slave girl," he snarled, his voice shaking with fury. "She is attempting to ruin my nephew's reputation because he rejected her advances, and she cannot accept that a gentleman would have no interest in someone like her." But Reverend Morrison didn't back down. "Then let us question the witnesses. Let us hear from those who saw what occurred. Bring forth Mama Ida. Bring forth Jacob from the stables." Let them speak before God and these gathered men." Clemens was sent to drag Mama Ida and Jacob forward, and I have never seen two people more terrified. Mama Ida's legs were shaking so badly she could barely walk, and Jacob's face had gone gray as ash. They were being forced to choose between truth and survival, between their conscience and their families, and I hated that I had put them in this position. I hated that my need to speak had endangered them. But I also knew that silence was killing all of us slowly, that we were drowning in lies, and someone had to break the surface and breathe real air, even if it meant going under again. Master Hartwell's eyes promised death if they spoke. They promised worse than death. They promised that special kind of suffering reserved for slaves who defied their master's will, who embarrassed them in front of their peers, who forgot their place so completely that severe punishment was required to remind everyone else where the lines were drawn. "Tell these men the truth," Master Hartwell commanded, his voice deadly calm now. "Tell them that nothing improper occurred during my nephew's visit, and that this girl has invented these accusations out of malice and delusion." The silence stretched out, painful and sharp. I watched Mama Ida's face, watched the war being waged behind her eyes, survival versus truth, fear versus righteousness, her grandchildren versus her soul. I would not have blamed her if she had denied everything. I would not have blamed Jacob if he had called me a liar to save himself. How could I? What right did I have to ask them to sacrifice everything for my truth? But then something miraculous happened. Mama Ida, who had survived 70 years of slavery, who had been bought and sold 3 times, who had buried children and grandchildren and a husband, who had every reason to choose safety over truth, straightened her bent back and lifted her chin and said in a voice that shook but did not break, "I heard that girl screaming. I heard her screaming like her life was being torn out of her. And I saw that man come out of that barn, saw him stumbling and adjusting his clothes like he'd been doing something shameful. I know what happened. God forgive me for staying silent this long, but I know exactly what happened." Jacob found his voice too, though it came out choked and rough. "I saw it. I saw him come out, and I saw her after, saw what he'd done. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't protect her. And that's been eating me alive every day since. But I saw it, and Mama Ida's telling the truth, and I won't lie about it anymore, no matter what it costs me." The gathered plantation owners stirred uncomfortably. This wasn't how these situations were supposed to go. Slaves were supposed to back down, supposed to recant, supposed to know their place. The fact that 2 of them were standing there telling this story in front of white witnesses created a problem, because now the situation couldn't simply be swept away. Now there was corroboration. Now there was testimony that would spread through the county like wildfire, regardless of what happened next. Master Hartwell's face had turned a dangerous shade of purple. These slaves are lying to protect this girl, who is clearly... But Reverend Morrison interrupted him, which was itself shocking. "I have heard 3 consistent testimonies. I have seen the evidence in that young woman's eyes, in her demeanor, in the way she carries herself. I know the look of a woman who has been violated, sir, and I tell you before God that she bears it. This matter must be investigated properly. I will be writing to the church leadership in Raleigh, and I will be including testimony from all 3 of these people." "You have no authority here," Master Hartwell spat. "I have the authority of God's truth," Reverend Morrison replied calmly, "and that is the only authority that ultimately matters." The aftermath of that afternoon came swift and brutal, unfolding exactly as I had known it would, but somehow worse than I had imagined. Master Hartwell tried to have all 3 of us, me, Mama Ida, and Jacob, sold south within the week, but Reverend Morrison had moved quickly. Before he even left Chatham County, He had written letters to the Methodist Episcopal Church leadership, to abolitionist sympathizers in Raleigh, to Quaker families he knew who opposed slavery, and to several influential women in the church who had been working quietly against the institution for years. The story spread through the county like fire through dry grass, not because people necessarily believed it or cared about justice for an enslaved woman, but because scandal is always entertaining, especially when it involves the educated nephew of a prominent plantation owner. Thomas Hartwell's name became poison in Raleigh. His university friends distanced themselves from him. Families who had considered him as a potential husband for their daughters suddenly found him unsuitable. His own father, Master Hartwell's brother, was furious, not about what Thomas had done to me, but about the fact that he had been stupid enough to get caught, to create a situation that couldn't be easily contained. Within 3 weeks, Thomas had left North Carolina entirely, relocating to Alabama where no one knew the story, and he could start fresh with his reputation intact. As for me, I was still Master Hartwell's property, and he was determined to make me pay for humiliating him. The sale south was arranged with a trader who specialized in difficult slaves, those who had run away, who had fought back, who had dared to speak when silence was demanded. I had 1 week to say goodbye to everything I had ever known, every person I had ever loved. I spent that week in a fog of terror and strange, unexpected relief. At least the truth was out. At least Sarah May Collier had spoken. At least I would not die having never said what was done to me. But on the morning I was supposed to be handed over to the slave trader, something unexpected happened. A Quaker family named the Spencers arrived at the plantation with a bank draft. They had been moved by the scandal and by Reverend Morrison's passionate letters describing my situation. They offered to purchase me, not to use me as a slave, but with the explicit intention of working toward my manumission. Master Hartwell, who was eager to be rid of me and happy to take their money, agreed immediately. I was given 5 minutes to gather my few possessions, and then I was leaving the only home I had ever known, riding away in the Spencer family's wagon toward an uncertain future. The Spencers were good people. They truly were. They treated me with kindness and respect, paid me wages for my work, and immediately began the legal process to free me. But manumission in North Carolina in 1855 was not simple. There were laws, restrictions, requirements. Freed slaves had to leave the state within 90 days or risk being enslaved again. There were bonds to be posted, court appearances to be made, documents to be filed and approved by judges who largely opposed the idea of free black people living among them. It took 2 years. 2 long years of legal wrangling, of appearing before hostile judges, of the Spencers spending money they could ill afford on lawyers and fees and bonds. 2 years of living in a strange limbo, not enslaved, but not free, not quite trusted by the free black community who didn't know me, not quite safe from slave catchers who didn't care about legal technicalities. But on October 15th, 1857, on my 27th birthday, I stood in a courtroom in Pittsburgh, and a judge grudgingly, resentfully but legally, declared me a free woman. I held papers in my shaking hands that said Sarah May Collier was no longer property. I was a person under the law, with the right to own property, to marry, to move freely, to speak my own name with pride.
Freedom papers don't erase what was done to you. They don't give back what was stolen. They don't heal the wounds that live deeper than scars, that lodge in your bones and your blood and your dreams and wake you screaming in the night. I want to be clear about that because sometimes people hear about manumission and they think it's a happy ending, a problem solved, a story tied up neatly with a bow. But freedom is not the same as healing, and legal status doesn't undo violation. I still woke up some mornings trapped in that barn with Thomas Hartwell's weight crushing me, his hand over my mouth, his breath hot and sour against my face. I still flinched when white men looked at me too long, still felt my body go rigid and cold with terror when I had to be alone with any man, regardless of his color or his character or his intentions. I still carried the shame that people had tried to place on me, even though I knew intellectually that it wasn't mine to carry, that I had done nothing wrong, that the sin belonged entirely to the man who had violated me. The Spencers helped me as much as they could. They connected me with a community of free Black people in Pennsylvania, where I eventually relocated because North Carolina's laws required me to leave. They introduced me to Reverend Morrison, who had continued his ministry and his quiet work against slavery. They gave me something I had never had before: choices. Where to live, what work to do, how to spend my days, who to trust with my story. And slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild myself. Not into who I was before. That girl was gone and I mourned her, but into someone new. Someone who had been broken and had chosen to speak anyway. Someone who had survived when survival should have been impossible. I learned to read, which was its own kind of revolution. The Spencer's daughter, Mary, taught me in secret at first, because teaching enslaved people to read was illegal in North Carolina, and old habits died hard. But once I had my freedom papers, I devoured books like a starving woman devours bread. I read Frederick Douglass's narrative and wept because someone had found words for the wordless horror. I read Harriet Jacobs's story and recognized myself in her pain. I read the Bible without someone telling me what it meant, and I found a God there who cared about justice, who saw the suffering of the oppressed, who promised that truth would ultimately prevail. And then I started speaking. Reverend Morrison invited me to share my testimony at a small abolitionist meeting in Philadelphia. I was terrified. I had spoken the truth once to Reverend Morrison on that Sunday morning in Chatham County, and it had cost me everything I knew. But I had also learned something in that moment, that my voice mattered, that Sarah May Collier's truth deserved to exist in the world, that silence was a kind of death, and speaking was a kind of resurrection. So I spoke. I told a room full of white abolitionists, mostly Quakers and progressive Methodists, people who opposed slavery but had never experienced it, what it meant to be an enslaved woman in North Carolina. I told them about the daily humiliations, the constant fear, the way we were treated as less than human. And then I told them about Thomas Hartwell and what he did to me in that barn, and how Master Hartwell tried to hide the truth, tried to erase me entirely. The room was absolutely silent when I finished. Several women were crying. A few men looked sick. But more importantly, they were angry, righteously, appropriately angry about an injustice that demanded anger as a response. One woman approached me afterward, a Quaker named Elizabeth Comstock. "Would you be willing to share this testimony more widely?" she asked. "There are many who need to hear it." And so I became a speaker for the abolitionist movement, though I never quite expected or wanted that role. I traveled throughout Pennsylvania, New York, and eventually into New England, speaking at churches, meeting houses, women's societies, and abolitionist gatherings. I shared my story, not all of it. Some parts were too sacred, too painful, too private to share with strangers, but I shared enough. I shared the parts that mattered, the parts that could change minds and hearts and perhaps even laws. I spoke about what it meant to live without protection, without recourse, without the basic human right to say no to violation. I spoke about how the entire system of slavery depended on silencing women like me, on hiding truths like mine, on pretending that enslaved women were not fully human, and therefore their suffering didn't count. I spoke about Mama Ida and Jacob, who had risked everything to tell the truth when it mattered most. I spoke about the countless other Sarah Mays who never got the chance to speak, who died with their truths locked inside them, who were erased so completely that history would never even record their names. Some people received my testimony with compassion and commitment to change. Others were hostile, particularly men who accused me of exaggerating, of lying, of trying to make white people look bad. You can't prove it happened, they would say. You can't prove your master's nephew did what you claim. And they were right in a sense. I had no physical evidence that would hold up in any court. I had no photographs, no medical examination, no confession from Thomas Hartwell. All I had was my word, Mama Ida's testimony, Jacob's corroboration, and the lived truth of my own body and memory. In the legal system of 1857 America, that was worth almost nothing. But I learned something important during those years of speaking. Legal proof is not the same as truth, and truth has its own power. Every time I spoke, women would approach me afterward. White women, free black women, even other formerly enslaved women, and they would whisper their own stories to me. Stories of violation, of silence, of truths that had been buried for years or decades. No one has ever believed me, they would say. No one has ever let me speak about it. And in those moments, I understood that my testimony was doing something beyond the political work of abolition. It was giving other women permission to know that what happened to them mattered, that their truths deserved to exist, that they were not alone. I also reconnected with my mother during this time. Through the network of Quakers and abolitionists, I was able to send word to the Johnson plantation in Chatham County that I was alive, free, and looking for her. It took almost a year, but eventually the Spencers received word back. My mother, Dinah, was still alive. She was 49 years old, still enslaved, but alive. We began a correspondence through sympathetic intermediaries, letters that had to be read aloud to her and written down on her behalf by literate slaves who risked punishment to help us. "I am so proud of you," she wrote in one letter. "I am proud that you spoke. I am proud that you survived. I am proud that Sarah Mae Collier is still here, still fighting, still real." I kept that letter with me always. When the work became too hard, when the memories became too heavy, when I questioned whether speaking had been worth the cost, I would pull out my mother's words and read them again. Sarah Mae Collier is still here. Yes. Yes, I was. They had tried to erase me, but I was still here.
Now, in 1859, I am 29 years old, and I have been free for 2 years. The country is tearing itself apart over the question of slavery. Kansas bleeds, John Brown raids Harper's Ferry, and everyone can feel that something enormous and terrible and perhaps necessary is coming. War feels inevitable, though no one knows what form it will take or what will remain when the smoke clears. But whatever comes, I know this. They tried to hide the truth, and they failed. Thomas Hartwell tried to take something from me that he had no right to touch, and Master Hartwell tried to bury that crime in silence and threats. They tried to erase Sarah Mae Collier completely, to make me disappear as if I had never existed, as if my pain didn't matter, as if enslaved women were not fully human, and therefore our violations were not really violations at all. They failed. I am still here. My voice is still here. My truth is still here, living and breathing and spreading like seeds on the wind. Every time I speak, every time someone hears my testimony and believes it and lets it change them, the truth grows stronger. Every time another woman whispers her own story to me and I witness it and hold it with care, the truth grows stronger. Every time someone who heard me speak goes home and questions the system that allows human beings to be treated as property, that denies basic humanity to people based on the color of their skin, the truth grows stronger. I think often about Mama Ida and Jacob, who are still enslaved on the Hartwell plantation as far as I know. I think about the choice they made that afternoon, the impossible choice between safety and truth, and how they chose truth even though it could have cost them everything. I think about how their courage gave me courage, how their willingness